Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and welcome to the first AdoramaPIX Rapid Fire Critique of 2014. They are back again. Check out their photo books at AdoramaPIX.com. I love those books, but before we jump into that, if you haven't signed up for the FroKnowsPhoto email list, you can do so right here in the orange box. Just go ahead, click, put your name, email address in, hit send it, and I will send you a guide to capturing motion in low light situations. You could also submit your rapid fire critique images through the submit photos button. Send me a Flickr group. It's free to use Flickr. Just do it there. So before we jump into it, you see the lens flare that's coming in? You want to know how important a lens hood is? I'm gonna make a lens hood. You ready? There's a lens hood, and there goes the lens flare. All I am doing is shading the light. This is good. I'm probably going to make a video about it. So let's get into the rapid fire critique right here. We've got images from Nick Sloan. We have 10 images, and let's get into the rapidly McFiring McCritique. So here we go with the first image. It looks like a bunch of flowers. We can see that the sharpness is right about here. The color is throwing me off slightly. Just a little bit. There's not as much interest in this image as I first thought, and part of that is probably due to the color. So I think pulling out some of the white bounce, like pulling out on the yellow and getting this less warm and a little bit of the tint of the greens going to the more of the magenta side, it's more of a processing thing than a photo thing. If we could have shot tighter, it would be cool to get this because that's nice and sharp, but what were we shooting with? Nikon D3000, 1/80th of a second, 4.5 at 200. Now, I know some people get angry when I go, oh my God, it was shot with the D3000, how amazing. Well, yeah, it's pretty amazing when you get certain shots with cameras like that. I own a D3000. It was part of the super secret project, and that thing it's old at this point, but it doesn't mean that it can't take fantastic pictures, and I believe this was with an 18-55 lens because I looked it up. So this image is all right, not most spectacular in the world, and it's also not bad either. So this is cool. What I like about this is that it's not a straight on angle of a Ferris wheel with the lights. I love these long exposures. I love what happens with them. The one thing I would do here again with post-processing, I would pump up the contrast. And I know a lot of people say, oh, all you say is pump up the contrast. Well, if you boomified this image, you would see the difference and how much more that this would just pop. So again, D3000, amazing. Show more information for anybody looking to do the long exposures. F9 1.3 seconds, ISO 100 with a 35mm 1.8. I am pretty sure. So yeah, what would make this image even better? I love the composition. I love how that's working, but pumping up the contrast and vibrance in this would really take it to the next level. Boom. I'm going to see what lens this was again. Show more information. 2.8, which is leading me to believe it's a 35-1.8, all right, at 1/30th of a second. All right, so that's kind of interesting. 1/30th of a second using a 35mm lens shooting at 2.8 at ISO 200. This is something in the exposure range because it looks like it's not fully sharp, and part of that is you've got your 2.8, which is going to give you a shallow depth of field, narrow depth of field, narrow focal length. You've got the, 30th of a second, hand holding with a 35mm lens, except the 35mm lens is on the DX sensor, which makes it roughly a 52mm focal length equivalent. So you don't want to have a shutter speed, rule of thumb, less than your focal length. So in that case, it would be 1/50th of a second or 1/60th of a second. There's plenty of room. What I would have done here, instead of ISO 200, ISO 400, you take that 1/30th of a second, you're now at 1/60th of a second, so you have less possibility for handshake, but it's okay. It's not extravagant, it's not awesome, not your fault, but this is here, but there's not one here, and everything else is even from the top to bottom, so this is kind of throwing me off a little bit. It's kind of painful, but I don't dislike. I'd like to see it in black and white. I do like the color, but I'd be curious to see the black and white. So this is more of an exposure thing than anything else, just to try to stave off some handshake and hand motion. But I think black and white would make this one stronger. Okay, I think I know what this is. Let's see. 35mm 1.7 f7.1. See, that stuff's interesting. I'm going to take a quick look to see if this is shot in manual or if it's going to tell me if it was like aperture priority mode. If I can find it real quick. Exposure program, no. Metering, multi-segmented, exposure mode, auto. Yep, that answered that. And I didn't look at that before. So anytime I see that it says f7.1 in any camera, whether it's a D4 or a D3000, that tells me that it was in auto. So I like the framing and composition. So let me reiterate this first. When you're starting out, whether you have the best camera in the world or a camera phone, if your composition is tight and really good right off the bat, you can learn exposure without a problem. I rather have people start off in auto, and I know some people are like, oh my God, you have a video guide that says get out of auto, but when you're first starting out, you need to take that time at the beginning to just focus on shooting. And what happens is you just train your eye and you're not worried about all the other nuances of getting your settings right, and you're there to get the image. If you capture the moment and it's the worst exposure in the world, but you captured the moment, then I'd be like, that is an amazing job. Now, here's what you could do in the future to do a better exposure, because you can learn exposure any day of the week, but getting your framing and composition right is not the easiest thing in the world. So if you have a good jump start on that, by all means, start in full auto. I don't care. I think it's the best place to be. It's where I was for like 2 years or 3 years before I finally ventured out. So this is nice framing, nice composition. Boomify it if you want. I don't mind this processing. I don't mind this editing. But one thing is check out, actually, I love the fact that the bottom lights are still in here. That adds to it. If you cut off this one thing, it just becomes a boring image in my opinion. But again, think of that shooting in auto. I was glad I could pick that out just by looking at it. All right, so this is one of those images that is a no-go. The first three, very good. This image, let's see some more. Let me just, f7.1, so I don't even need to look. We know that's going to be an auto. So using the 35mm 1.8, this image definitely doesn't work at 7.1. The reason is there's too much in focus. You've got all these weeds off to the right-hand side. Let's not even look at processing. Being that it's a flower, do flowers work well in black and white? Not so much, because they're colorful usually. And usually if you convert certain things to black and white, you're trying to hide some things in color. But let's just look at the image. Composition-wise, it doesn't work because you have all of this stuff over here. This is like weeds. It doesn't work. If you filled the frame, got closer with the flower, you'd be better off. And then if you got off to the side of the flower and focused with that 35 1.8, say around 2 or 2.5 on just the inside of the flower, you could do that. You could close focus and make some interest in the image. So it's about how you would compose it. This straight on, not good, but how you can make it better is you come off to the side, get closer to one of the flowers, shoot some of them out of focus, get that color right, and I think you'd be good. See, that is how you critique. I am not ripping the photographer a new a-hole because I'm not. I am pointing things out and then giving suggestions for how they can be better or done different. That, in my opinion, is how you do the critique. Okay, so here we go again. 1.8. Wow. All right, so 35 1.8, we know that. Shooting at 1/160th of a second at ISO 100. So first things first, let's just say you don't have to stay at 100 ISO. That camera is fine at 800, barely fine, I may add, but I also shot that camera myself in a concert at 1600 and did a good job with it. This is not bright enough or vibrant enough. It's a little underexposed. So in this case, at 1/60th of a second, you could do a couple of things to get more light to make it brighter. You could drop from 1/60th of a second, you could cut it in half and do 1/80th of a second. That's going to give you a stop of light. Or you could bump your ISO from 100 to 200 and you're going to get more sensitivity, get more sensitive light. So we're going to get to the composition and the framing in a minute. The framing and composition is fine, but let's get the exposure right. It needs to be more vibrant. It needs to be brighter. You can fix that in the raw file in post. You could do that without much of a problem by upping your exposure, sliding it to the right, and then bumping your contrast slightly. But let's look at what the focus point is. Being that it's at, why is my phone vibrating? Being that it's at 1.8, this meter is not in focus. I think what you want here is to have the whole parking meter in focus. And remember, because your background is super uber duper fantastically deep, you don't have to worry about it not blowing out and getting nice and bokeh-y in the background. So this is something I would have shot maybe at 3.5 or maybe even f4 because I want this parking meter, this part in focus. It's one of those old parking meters. I love these things. So either that, So this is one shot. I would do that closer. Then if you want to shoot at 1.8, I would go horizontal, and I would frame it so that I would have maybe the top of the quarter thing in here, but I'd focus on the thingamabobber arm thing that moves. That's what I would do. So that's a secondary shot that you can do. But nice job with your composition. I'm really liking what I'm seeing with that. All right, we got a hose on the ground. Hose on the ground. Hose on the ground. Literally a hose on the ground. Not doing much for me. Converted it to black and white. In this case, it's got to be color or have more interest in black and white. Not much I can say about this one. We're going to move on to the next thing. I like what you're trying. These are all inanimate objects, and when you are able to make an inanimate object stand out and make it have interest, that's great. The lighting on this is pretty cool. I like how the background is separated. You've got some vignetting going on here. Again, with the D3000 right there. 1/30th of a second, 2.8. Wow, you love hand-holding at slow shutter speeds. Gotta bump that up. So you're gonna get killed at those slow shutter speeds when subjects start moving. The framing and composition is fine. There's not terribly too much interest in the image, but I'm sure you're just going around trying and learning, and I like the cross-sections of images that you've been showing me so far. All right, I like this, but while it's loading, oh, good. Good. I'm glad that you didn't cut off the shoelace. That's very good. I like the way that the focus is tight right here. This is where we're using probably that 1.8 lens again. Yep, 35-1.8. Again, 1/20th at 1600 ISO. Holy crap. All right, so in this case, it was a very dark situation, and you were able to do a good job stabilizing it at 1/20th of a second at 1600. Do you see that the D3000 shot at 1600 can live? It survives. It's not terrible. Nice job. Black and white, nice processing. Great job. Love this composition. Knowing all the settings here and knowing what you did, I really like this shot. Nice job there. Okay. Show more info. F8, 1/250th. All right. Not bad. I'll point out what I like about it. I like that the lines are running this way. I like there's lines running this way. It became a multi-dimensional image, which is good. I like that the sky is popping out. I'm glad you didn't go black and white. I like that you boomified it slightly. Other than that, it's not extremely interesting. But in a photo story context, it could work very well with tight shots of the brick, with tight shots more like shooting into this angle and this corner and just getting that shot. Now, you're limited with the 35, but all right, those are ideas you could do for the future. So far, nice job. Is that the last image? That can't be the last image. Is that really the last image? Was that 10 images? Let's see. That was 10 images. Nick Sloan, nice job with the D3000. I think you've done a fantastic job here. Your processing is not far off. Your composition is definitely on 90% of the time. Just work on getting out of auto and into the manual mode so you can start controlling the camera yourself. Nice job shooting at 1600 here. Don't be afraid of the ISO. And that is another AdoramaPIX Rapid Fire Critique. Check out AdoramaPIX.com if you're going to do illuminized prints. They do prints for like $1. They do 8x10 sometimes for $1 on special. You can't go wrong. Try them out. It's up to them to do a good job once you try them out making prints. I make my big-ass prints from them, those illuminized ones, and that's it. Don't forget to sign up for the email list, and you can submit your images right here, right now. There you go. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.